Welcome to the walk. I'm Kim.
And I'm Neil.
Today we're going to continue on our journey. We're going to tell you a little bit more about it. We just started our channel. In case you missed our other videos, you can check those out. We're kind of newer Christians. We just started going to church. We're about to have our 1 year anniversary of going to church. And so we're here just trying to help others who I think are newer and kind of find their way. And hopefully you can come with us along our walk.
Absolutely. So this is going to focus mainly on my particular journey or the beginning of it. Kim, we'll get to hers. I think it's going to take a little more warming up. She's got a little bit more of a intense background there. And I would like to tell you that I had this, traumatic experience. I was homeless, and some major event happened that made me turn to Jesus. But that really wasn't the case. So some of you might be in a similar thing. So I'm just going to go from there. We'll talk a little bit about my childhood and religion and kind of how I viewed things. But I can tell you that prior to coming to Jesus, I wasn't an atheist. I wasn't against, religion. I just didn't think any of it was for me. And I knew, in my intellect that there's no way that, this all just happened by evolution from monkeys or some nonsense, and this has just happened chance. There had to be something more out there. So I believed always in a higher power. I just wasn't specifically, I didn't call it Jesus yet. So that was kind of my thing. But I was also I had a slight pull, a slight interest in religion itself. And so one of the things that I used to do a lot with my friends who were Christians for long term is I guess I would ask them questions I really didn't believe they'd be able to answer. And the point of that was to kind of like make myself like, I'm not really sure. And I don't know how to explain it to you, but it just seemed like I was on a quest, but I didn't really want to say, hey, I'm interested. So you might be in that position. You might be one of those people out there that are like, if you clicked on this video, what brought us to Jesus to begin with? So maybe you can kind of relate to that. So I had this draw, and kind of going back to my background, I was I was baptized Catholic, and my grandmother, my parents were what we call CNS,
CNE.
CNE. I'm sorry.
Christian.
I know. I'm getting better at this.
Christmas and Easter.
Yeah, Christmas and Easter people. So we would go there occasionally, but we never did that on a regular basis. But my grandmother, she was a very devout Catholic. And she went to a very, I guess a lot of Catholic churches are very, what would you call it? What's a good word here? Structured or?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, they have their ceremonies and specific ways they do things, and that's generally how they're going to be.
Even as a kid, and again, you may be Catholic or whatever, or thinking of that, I'm not trying to discourage you, even as a kid, I remember going there with my grandmother who was, older at the time. There was lots of older people. And it was like, kneel, stand. And I remember thinking, like, man, this is tough on these old people. Like, they're trying to, there's a guy, he's like shaking and trying to kneel on this little board and then get back up. And I was like, again, I wasn't getting the message. It was very complex, especially for a kid. And I wasn't like a real young kid. I'm talking about I was sort of like 12 at this point where I could comprehend, different concepts. But it was just, there was a lot going on. It wasn't clear. And I had seen through, whether it was on YouTube or whatever, but I had seen some, as I got older, times where a pastor would talk about something, a topic that was, from Scripture, he would take that information and be able to relay it to real life, where you could apply it and go, okay, I get this now. This makes sense. This is like a lesson. I look personally now, I don't know how you feel about it, but I look at the Bible as kind of a playbook, right? Like there's a lot of lessons and there's a lot of knowledge on how to live and how to be. Would you agree with that?
I agree, yeah. I definitely feel that. And it was funny because when we first started bringing it up, Neil was the one who was like, we should go to church. And from that time to the time we actually went to church, it was probably like a few years even. I had a lot of guards against it because of my negative experience, and I didn't want to give my kids that negative experience. And I seen what happens if you bring your kids from that. The turnouts can be worse. But now I understand that given the right foundation, it is a great way to raise your family, and I'm excited to raise my kids in church and to teach them that way. I say, we say this a lot, is like sometimes in life you just feel like things happen for a reason, and
that's
100% think like even like long term, Neil and I have been together for like 13, 14 years now, a long time. And it took till now, me marrying him, that I don't think I would have went back to church, because I don't think anyone would have encouraged me and stuck with me and said, let's do this. And so I think God puts people in your lives, and even our relationship especially. It's always just funny. Even just a quick little note, like when we met, we were living, what was it? It was like the beginning of online dating, and it was like Match.com, and we put our profiles 50-mile radius, and we lived 49.5 miles from each other. So the likelihood that we would have ever met would have just
because 50 is your rate.
Yeah, so we were just like on the cusp of it, and I was literally on it for, I want to say, like a week, and then I got just overwhelmed with nasty comments from men and got off of it. And luckily I went on a date with Neil, otherwise I would have never met him. And I always say that was like God in that time putting him there, that knowing in years from now he would encourage me to go back to church. So
yeah, I was on there for like a week, and it was crickets for sure. Yeah, and by the way, I know this is going to be a question. We did not get married online. We got married in real life when we met.
Nowadays, it's very common. But back when we were dating, this was like the beginning of it, and all my friends thought I was crazy, absolutely crazy for doing that, because they're like, why don't you just meet someone? Now it's very common. So there's just little things like that that helped put me there. And I did, even though I had a negative experience with the people, and not all people are bad, not everybody there was bad. What I did miss is that feeling. And I always say, like, when I went to our church the very first time, I had that feeling again, where I always say, like, it feels like a warmth that like wraps around you, and that like feeling like God is there. And I did miss that. And the second I felt that, I was like, this is what I want. Like, this is what I've been missing. So
yeah, I mean, I all the time in our other business, we were instructors, and we're standing in front of a lot of people, and a lot of times people will come up to camera or whatever, or even me at the end, and they'll say, when I first met, or when I first saw you, I was kind of intimidated. I have that look about me. I don't know. I don't think so, but people tell me that constantly. So I'm not an approachable guy, I guess, is the best way to say that. Would you go with that?
yeah, he just has that feeling about, it's so funny. And then once they get to know him, they're like, especially the older women, they're all love Neil. They're like, where's Neil at? And at first they're terrified of him. Like, I told you, he's so sweet and so kind. He just has that look about him.
So where we're going with this story is when we originally went to that first church, I'm more of a guarded guy, I guess, to say. And after, spending a very short period of time with the pastor, and it really clicked together. I mean, I would consider our pastor a very, very close friend at this point, right? I mean,
yeah.
we've had dinner with his family, and when I think about it from where I was, which was just like, I believe in something, to we now are fully, I mean, I don't know if it's the proper term, but fully integrated in the church. I mean, we now do a lot of activities. In fact, this month coming up, half of the activities are us and our other company and what we do. And, we're very much involved. I mean, I've missed a couple. I'm a police officer, and I work some crazy hours sometimes, but for the most part, we almost always go to every Wednesday Bible study now, right?
Yeah, and we always say we don't do things just halfway.
We're
all in.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the second we decided this is what we wanted, that's what we decided to do. And we've seen so many great things this past year. We're going to do videos on that. We're going to talk more about my experience. Like I hinted at it, is I've had kind of a negative experience, and how I went from that, and then realized separating that experience and those people from relationship with God, and that not everything is bad. And also how I've taken that as a Christian and realized, wow, it's so important how you treat people, and how you are as a person is really, really important, because you are an example. And you could, if you are not acting correctly, if you are acting a certain way, you could just discourage people from wanting to go to church, because they see you as a Christian and you doing these things. So I think it ingrains that in my head always, to be a little bit more forgiving, to watch how I watch people, I treat people, and be giving and be a good example of a Christian.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing that was very profound to me, especially what I just told you, kind of from my background, is that when I go to church, even today, I told Kim this, and I can't believe I'm going to tell you this, but I find it a very emotional experience. I don't know why, but like, I'm almost on the verge of tears pretty much the whole time. I don't know if that's the presence of Jesus, or I don't know the answer to that, but it's just a very emotional experience, and it feels right to me. So you may find that there's something very similar to that when you go.
We would love to hear more about your walk, where you're at. Maybe you've been to church your whole life. Maybe you're a newer person. Maybe you're just thinking about it, and so you're doing some research. We'd love to hear about it.
And we appreciate you guys taking the walk with us, and we look forward to the journey together.